We read from chapter 6, verses 17 onwards, and then we start in chapter 7. We can read from verse 15. And the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, and every bondman and every free man hid themselves in the dens and the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, Fall on us, and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? Chapter 7. And after these things I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. And I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God. And he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels, to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, Hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads. And I heard the number of them that were sealed. And they were sealed 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel. Of the tribes of Judah were sealed 12,000. Of the tribe of Reuben were sealed 12,000. Of the tribe of Gad were sealed 12,000. Of the tribe of Asher were sealed 12,000. Of the tribe of Nephilim were sealed 12,000. Of the tribe of Manasseh were sealed 12,000. Of the tribe of Simeon were sealed 12,000. Of the tribe of Levi were sealed 12,000. Of the tribe of Issachar were sealed 12,000. Of the tribe of Zebulun were sealed 12,000. Of the tribe of Joseph were sealed 12,000. Of the tribe of Benjamin were sealed 12,000. Last time when we stopped, we stopped with the question that when the judgment of God is going to come, who is going to be able to stand? That's what we did in the last verse of the 6th chapter. Now, before we go to chapter number 7, and as what we read through chapter number 7, there's an important question that we need to ask. What, according to you, is the most common aspect of false man-made religion? What is the most common aspect of man-made religion? Salvation would be that man would work, right? And he keeps working, and what happens if he does not work anymore? He will lose his salvation. That's the most common thing you can take up in any false religion. That man, and in one sense it is very consistent, that man works for his salvation, and since man works for his salvation, it is logical that when man stops working, his salvation will be lost. The Roman Catholic Church, the papal Rome, the greatest problem that they see against the reformers or the Protestant doctrine is the doctrine of perseverance of salvation. For the Roman Catholic Church, it is dangerous for a believer to think that his salvation is safe in the hands of God. Why? Because if salvation is safe, they can't threaten him every day for things that he has to do. You understand that? When he is daily dependent on burning a candle, giving an offering, giving money to the priest, listening to whatever the priest is going to tell him, starve himself to death, when all these things are not done, human man-made religion will always tell you that if you don't do this, you will die. Right? Now let's look at the Christian religion. The definition of a Christian, what you can use always is this. A Christian is a person who has been saved by the grace of God and kept by the grace of God to the very end, not only of this life but also of the life to come. Who's not only saved by God but also kept by God. And that's the most important aspect which which separates false religion from Christian religion. Because in Christianity, God not only starts your faith, God also finishes. When he says finishes, he completes what is required. That means the salvation of a Christian is sure, not only now, but till the end, right? So when you look at chapter number 7 and look at all the kind of details inside, in one small point, chapter number 7, at least the verses that we have read from 1 to 8, is only about that one thing. A Christian's salvation is bought, perfected, and kept by God Himself. Nothing is going to happen to the Christian. He is not going to lose his salvation, not because of anything that Christian has done, but because God is going to keep the salvation. And that's, I want you to understand this. So, my request would be, don't get lost into the unnecessary details of what we're going to see in the remaining 8 verses. There are a lot of things that's going to come in. There are a lot of things that you might have learned about these verses before, and we'll even discuss that. But first and foremost, you need to understand this is about you, your salvation being safe in God. Now, let's look at that. Verse 1. After this, I saw 4 angels. Right now, many people who study the book of Revelation would say that after this would mean a chronological sequence of events. Meaning, people have cried that who will stand, and then when it comes who will stand, these set of events are happening. You understand? But you need to understand, when John says after this, he is not mentioning chronological of events that are happening. He is mentioning the images that he is seeing. You look at that verse, after this I saw. You understand? It's about, he was earlier seeing these visions, now he is seeing a different set of vision. It is not chronological at all. In fact, a good way to look at the book of Revelation is this. I can give you different imageries, a very fit imagery in this case. Have you ever been to an exhibition? A big sale exhibition? And you'll have rows at the side, you'll have rows in the middle, and you'll have rows on both the sides, right? So when you go into the exhibition, there will be some stalls, you can see it from one side, right? And then you keep going, and when you come around, almost like a horseshoe, you'll see the same stall from the other side. The stall does not change, but only what has happened is you have moved around, and the stall that you are seeing from one side, you'll now see it from the other side, right? In apocalyptic literature, we'll always see this kind of thing happening. That same imagery is shown in different manners. It is the same scene, but it's seen from different perspectives, right? And now, what we are going to see here is something that has happened before what we studied in chapter 6. We studied in chapter 6 what? The seals being opened, right? We saw the 4 horsemen, and we saw towards the end the great problems happening, and then the verse says, do not hurt, who will stand, right? And we are discussing that who will stand. And let's look at those verses. And I saw 4 angels standing at the 4 corners, holding back the 4 winds of the earth, so that no wind should flow or blow on the earth or on the sea or any tree. Now, we spoke about this last time. When the imagery of the 4 horsemen, I don't know whether you have gone and seen it. It's basically taken from Zechariah chapter 6. You want to quickly look at that? Zechariah chapter 6. We'll not read. From verse 1 to 8, you'll have similar kind of horsemen. Now, the imagery is very similar to Zechariah chapter 6. Okay, now, just understand what is happening. The same 4 horsemen in Zechariah chapter 6 is now shown as 4, how does Revelation 7 start? 4 angels sending about 4 corners and 4 winds. It's the same scene again from a different vantage point. In fact, if you go back to Zechariah chapter 6, I'll show you something interesting. Zechariah chapter 6, verses 1 to 8 speaks about the different horses, but I want you to read verse 5. Can you read from verse 4 and 5? Can you read that, or I'll read that for you? And then I answered and said unto the angel that talked with me, what are these, my Lord? You'll see the parallel how it's happening. And he says, and the angel answered and said unto me, these are the four spirits of the heavens which go forth from standing before the Lord of all the earth. Right? It's referring to the horses. These are the four spirits. That's KJV. Any other translation that we have? ESV says winds. Because the word for spirit in Hebrew is wind, the word ruah. Right? It's the same word used. So if you come back to the book of Revelation, you see the same thing. The four horsemen is now shown as four winds. By four, the idea is simple. We are still using the idea of the four corners of the earth affecting the entire planet. So though each and every creature may not be mentioned, but when we speak about the generalities, we know from the four corners. When we speak about four corners covering the entire thing, that doesn't mean that the earth is square or it's flat or four cornered, but it's basically an idea to explain that the whole earth is covered. And we find this again and again. If you turn quickly to Jeremiah 49, when someone turn to Jeremiah 49. Verse 36. Can someone read that as you get it?
And upon Elam will I bring the four winds from the four quarters of heaven, and will scatter them towards all those winds, and there shall be no nation whither the outcasts of Elam shall not come.
Great, four winds. Now that's a very common theme that comes into apocalyptic literature. You can turn to Daniel chapter 8, verse 8. You can turn to Daniel 8. I'll read it for you. Therefore, the he goat waxed very great, and then he was strong, the great horn was broken, for it came up four notable ones towards the four winds of heaven. You'll find a similar thing when you turn to Matthew chapter 24. Verse 31. And it says, and he sent his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. From one end of heaven to the other. Again, the mark of the four winds. So, the scene that we are seeing again now is the scene repetition of chapter 6. Again, from a different vantage point. In fact, many commentators have said that chapter 7 is something like a small interlude, like a small intermission before it's almost like a secret or a suspense that's going to happen, and there is something added into that point. Okay, this is what God is going to do. Let's turn again to Revelation chapter 9. Sorry, Revelation chapter 7. Let's see what's happening. And after these things I saw four angels standing on the four corners of the earth, holding the four winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. Right? Now here's mentioning about what? We already spoke about earlier destruction in the chapter 6. A similar type. Every creature is not mentioned, but basic categories are mentioned. That all these categories would be destroyed by God. God, in His abundance or in His mercy, will keep His people, but in His justice, will destroy each part of the earth. But there's something that happens right after that. And I saw another angel ascending from the east. By east, We do not know. It's again apocalyptic literature. It could very well mean when we're looking at something like Jerusalem, we really do not know. But okay, maybe it's because it's mentioning Jerusalem. But we have one more angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God, and he cried with a loud voice to the four angels, to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea. So one more angel comes up, and what does the angel do? Shout to the other four angels and tells them this, saying, hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads. You understand what is happening? Before God is going to judge the earth, when God is going to destroy the earth, even in parts, He is already saying that the judgment will not affect His chosen ones. Right? So even if you think chapter 6 and chapter 7 are chronological, you understand how the chronological works. What is the question at the end of chapter 6? Who is stand? What is the answer? The sealed ones. Have the judgment already started in chapter 6? Yes. So the sealing should have happened before the judgment starts. Right? So you are seeing the scene between the scenes. So here's what's happening. So the angel is saying that even before the earth is judged, God's people will be given protection by God. Now here's it's important. What do you mean by God will protect His people? By those seals. Where are the seals put? On the foreheads. And we discussed this. The moment you look at the book of Revelation and we come and we understand it rationally, even now you will understand that the 666 on foreheads makes no sense. Right? Here what will happen? God is going to put a seal on their foreheads. But even before that, does that mean when the earth is destroyed, the believers will not suffer? What does that verse say here? They are hurt not till they are sealed. So does that sealing assure that they will not suffer the judgments? Why does it get assured that way? You've forgotten chapter 6. Chapter 6. What are those people told? Bodies under the souls under the altar. What are they told? Wait a little longer till the number of people who have to be slain. Believers are going to be slain. That's very obvious. In fact, they have said, wait a little while longer, not that when everyone will be raptured, but till the last person will be slain. So, believers in the world, their portion would be that they will get slain. So, here the sealing is not to protect them from the physical things. See, please again understand, and we have been saying this quite often. When God judges the earth, and when the mountain is destroyed, and when there's an earthquake that happens, it is not a judgment of the believer. You understand that? When a Christian dies and an unchristian man dies, the death is always a judgment by God on a unbeliever. On a believer, death is never a judgment. Why? Because who has already taken death for you? Christ has already taken death for you. So now death is not a punishment for your sins. You understand why death is not a punishment? Please, if you have not understood this, it's important for you to understand. Death for an unbeliever is what? It's a punishment for his sins. Right? In a Christian, can death be a punishment for his sins? No, why not? Because he cannot be punished twice for the same crime. Already one punishment has been taken by Christ. So he will not be again punished for someone who's already given the punishment in completeness. So when death comes to a Christian, this death is what he wants so that he can stand in front of God in glory. It is not a punishment for sins of the world or his own sins for that matter. Right? But it is one way. So here when the mountains are getting destroyed and the Bible says, I will seal my people on their foreheads, that is not protection from worldly elements. That's important for you to understand. So when people tell you that rapture has already happened and what you find here are only Jewish names, that's because church has already been taken away. You should understand that not in the context, not till anything that we have seen till now, there is no rapture. In fact, many of the people who promote rapture will tell you that rapture happened somewhere between chapter 3 and between first verse of chapter 4 and second verse of chapter 4. Can you guess why? You'll go there and you'll understand. Because what is told to John? Come up here. So they will say after chapter 3, the church was taken up. Right? So they really have to use things like that to make a point. So right now, till now we have not seen any kind of passage that shows that the church will not be a part of the tribulation. But if you look at the book consistently, we have always seen that right from John starts that he is a brother in the kingdom and tribulation. We have constantly seen that saints have been murdered for their faith, right from Smyrna to every church that is there. We have seen that the saints have suffered persecution and problems for their faith. So it is not true that the church will not suffer persecution. But again, God has still kept people, and that's what we need to come back. And I heard the number, okay, so like verse 3. So hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the tree, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads. The servants of God in their forehead. The actual word there is slaves. Similar word that Paul uses for himself when he describes himself both as an apostle, as a servant, as a slave of the Lord. And here are a big number of people who are sealed. Now, many people tell you, okay, these 1,44,000 people, actually people from Israel. They are from Israel's tribes, and from each tribe they have taken 12,000. Okay, first let's understand why it's not physical, then we come back to that. Right, a couple of things we need to understand. First and foremost, a Christian needs to understand protection is not physical. For a Christian, protection is not physical. Your salvation is safe because God has sealed you, and the seal can mean a lot of things. What do normally seals mean? What do normally seals indicate? Contract. Covenant. Contract. I mean, not exactly the same term, but similar. What else?
Safety. Agreement.
Okay.
Assurance.
Agreement.
To belong to somebody.
Who owns it? Seal shows ownership. Right? What does the seal show? So it shows agreement, it shows ownership. What does the seal show?
There is a time to open.
No, that's for the scroll.
No,
We are talking about-
give it the seal.
No, the seal is more like a mark.
If it's a case, I'm talking
But
about a case.
your seal is like a mark.
Right.
Right? So what does the mark? So one, it shows that there's a covenant, there's an agreement that by which the seal has been agreed. Second, it shows ownership. Third, it shows authority. Not only to whom does it belong, who possesses the right over that particular commodity. Right? Now, for a Christian, has God given us a seal? Holy Spirit. For every Christian, God has given us what? The Holy Spirit. And that's what shows us that we belong to God. So the moment we think about a seal in the Bible, and we think that God has put a seal on the forehead, what does it indicate? That God has chosen each person. Each person will be taken by God or used by God for the purpose. The point is not that there will be some number written here. Right? When we understand this, when we come down to 666, it's easier for us to understand if that means possession of God, this cannot actually mean a real number or something written on the forehead. Because if that is true, then here again there should be a number. But that's not what is involved. We have the seal of God that God gives a designated ownership of something, and God is sure to protect what he owns. The seal, the biggest importance of the idea of a seal is the protection of the commodity is now no longer with the commodity itself. You understand what it means? The person who owns it is the person who will protect it. Nothing is going to be touched to that which is sealed by God. And God says, I will. It's a very beautifully way it is written, saying, hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads. Right? Again, very clearly showing that authority which would be seen. The reason we say something is on the forehead is why?
We see
It is visible. It is not something that's going to be hidden. It is something that can be easily identified. It is not going to be a struggle to identify who's a believer and who's not a believer. It will be a seal that people can see. It is a seal that everyone can see and find out. And here's what's happening. And I heard the number of them which was sealed, 144,000 of all the tribes of children of Israel. Now, why is the idea that this is not actually physical Israel? Right? First and foremost, let's turn to the number 1,44,000. Right? So there are many people who are saying, yes, they have taken 12, 12, 12 from each tribe. But till this time, we have seen the number 12 in the book of Revelation. What does it indicate? Completeness, right? Do we have other 12s in the book of Revelation? If you remember, we had seen the entire list. The Israel, Jerusalem, the holy city, has got 12 gates. It's built on the foundation of 12 apostles and 12 apostles. Around the throne were 12 into 2, 24 elders. You remember the size of the New Jerusalem? I don't know which version you're using. If it's the KJV, it will say 12,000 stadia. So it is 12,000 by 12,000 by 12,000. It's a perfect cube. Right? Some versions have actually converted that into miles, which actually defeats the purpose of the imagery. Right? Let's not fool ourselves that it would actually be 12,000 size by 12,000, because showing a volume makes no sense. The volume is actually shown to show that it is perfect. It's complete. Right? So here what you see is 144 is how much? 12 into 12 into 144,000. Right? 12 into 12 into 1,000. 10 raised to 3. And so the entire number here is not about a particular number of people who are going to be there. It is ridiculous to think that God will choose 12,000 from each tribe of Israel and make them now go and preach. So the usual idea is this: God will take people from Israel and tell them to now preach the rest of the world. So they always say towards the end of the world, there will be big number of Jews that will be saved. We did the book of Romans. We did not say no to it. We believe that a lot of Jews would be saved. In fact, when people say we are against Israel, saying Israel has gone away and church has taken its place, is that true? Do we ever say Israel has gone away and church has taken its place? Which is the what has happened? Has Israel gone away and church has taken the place of Israel? Church was always there. From when? From when in the Old Testament? Adam ne kabhi kara. The promise given to the woman was what? Your seed and this and what? and Satan. Right? It was very cute. So even right from the garden, you have the church. So when people tell you that when we say something like this, that Israel has been replaced by church, we never say that. In fact, what we say, the true Israel is the true church. You understand? Or vice versa. The true church is true Israel. We have not replaced Israel. It could never be. In fact, what is the name of the holy city that comes down from heaven? Why is it New Church? But it is still what? New Jerusalem. Because as the Bible says, salvation is from the Jews. So we never deny that Jews have a role in salvation, but that does not mean every Jew is going to be saved. Right? Again, let's come down to the tribes. And one more reason to understand that these 12 tribes do not mean 12, the 12 from the unit. Right? For example, of the tribe of Judah were sealed 12,000. You remember the 12 tribes of Israel? Does anyone remember the 12 tribes of Israel? Who will be the eldest? Who is the first here? So you notice even the order is not what should be. Why do you think Judah would be first? Because Christ is from the tribe of Judah. In fact, if you go down, you'll find certain things who are not there. If you look at the group of the tribe of Judah, of the tribe of Reuben, of the tribe of Gad, of the tribe of Asher, of the tribe of Nephilim, of the tribe of Manasseh, of the tribe of Simeon, of the tribe of Levi, of the tribe of Issachar, of the tribe of Zebulun, of the tribe of Joseph, and the tribe of Benjamin. In this, how many are actually not tribes? Manasseh is not a tribe, and which one is missing? Dan. All the tribes which are there are not there. Dan is not there. In fact, we had this discussion earlier also. Is it possible today, or do you remember the division of Israel? Old Testament history?
10 kingdoms and 2.
There were, so how many kingdoms were they divided?
12.
12, 2. Which were the two on this side? You had northern kingdom and you had the southern kingdom, right? So you had the 10 separate and 2 separate. Now the 10 had already intermarried and there was no way of understanding who belongs to which group. The remaining 2, after the destruction of the temple of during the Herod's time, the temple which was there, even the existing records of people who are there are not were completely destroyed. So for someone to today find out who is a Jew is completely impossible. In fact, that's one of the reasons even today, and I'm not sure whether it's completely true or no, that they say they're still struggling to find someone who is from the tribe of Levi. Now, something interesting. In that group, do you find the tribe of Levi?
Yes.
Why is it interesting?
No one knows this.
No. They were never allotted land.
Yeah.
You remember that? They were never allotted land. They were always supposed to live on
Nice.
the tithes given by others. So what you see here is not necessary from any particular tribe. These are names of tribes that God has given more symbolically. So let's not get into the whole idea that why it has been this tribe, why not the other. But the idea is very clear. God will fix up a particular number of people from all over the world. In fact, a good way of looking at this chapter is this way. The first verse, chapter 1 to verse 8, have you heard of the two terms about the church? There is one term which is called as a term church militant. Right? And the second term is called as church triumphant. Church militant, meaning a church which is fighting, which is struggling. Right? That will be church where? On the earth. As long as the church is on the earth, the church would be a church which is militant, constantly fighting. That does not mean we take up arms and we fight. It means that we are fighting against powers and principalities, about wiles of the devil, and we are fighting a war. But the moment we die, we go to heaven, we become the church triumphant. Read on from verse 9. We'll come back to the early verses. And after this appeared, and lo, a great multitude, which no man could number, of all nations and kindreds and peoples and tongues, stood before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed with white robes and palms in the hand, and cried with a loud voice, saying, Salvation to our God, who sitteth upon the throne, and unto the Lamb. The same group of people were there earlier. Now, how are they seen? From one tribe? From 12 tribes, but from
All nations.
all nations, all tongues. You getting it? So the Bible at times can say God's people are taken from the land of Israel. It need not be the physical land. The ideas of what God has given to them is very clear. Right? So the point is this: out of every person, or for every person that God has marked, God has promised that He will not lose them. That 1,44,000 number is a number to show completeness to us. Right? Similarly, we find different kinds of numbers. We cannot come to 7, we come to 12, we come to 1,000. Every time we come to a number, we understand it is symbolic other than the context giving us something. So, a very important point that we need to understand, and the most important thing that we understand in Revelation chapter 7 is this: every person is kept by the power of God. No demonic spirits, no earthquakes, no evil eyes, no generation curses can ever touch a Christian's salvation. When most people believe things like that, it's because of the first thing that I started. Because the religion that they use is a man-made religion. Because only in man-made religion, the worry would be that if I don't do something, what will happen? I will lose my salvation. The whole fear that people give to each other, that there would be generational curses, and these generational curses have to be removed or you will lose your salvation, is false, because the God who has called is the God who keeps you from the judgment of the entire world. When we look again into the book of Revelation, we notice that some of the actions that are done on the earth are done by demons. Right? Who gives demons the authority to do something? God. So the entire, is it something very common that you've read before in someone else's life? Job's life. Remember Job's life? The death that happened in his family, the wars that happened was done by whom? God. But who protected Job by his sheer word? It was God. So every person who has been written, who has been sealed by God, no matter what happens, the sealing is complete by God, who will take care of it. So whenever we look at the book of Revelation, particularly this group of people, they'll be shown in different manners. Right now, the church is shown as how? 1,44,000. Verse 9, it will be shown as what? A great multitude. Later, it will be shown as a building or a temple. Later, the same group will be shown as 2 people. You understand that? It's the same group, which is again and again identified from different aspects. Here we saw the aspect from the first 8 verses, we saw it from the earth. The remaining verses we'll see it from the heaven. The identity of them. So we can be very sure this is not Israel. This is church. Right? Any idea that takes God's sealing only to a particular group of people of racial choice, we have studied in the book of Romans, can never be true. And it is never seen in the book of Revelation, particularly to the group of people to whom he is writing. I'll give you an example. In the book of Revelation, did you find Jews given very high status? You forget our passages. They are not from church, they belong to the synagogue of Satan. So the Jews are called as what? In the book of Revelation itself, right? As what? Synagogue of Satan. So there cannot be a mix up here and lead them to confusion. It was very clear. Jews who believed that their identity, being people of God, were only a synagogue of Satan. They were not the real believers. But every real believer, when God called them as Israel, they will understand what it meant. And that's the story of that 1,44,000 people. Who all are there in the 1,44,000? Every person who was ever born, whoever believed in God, who trusts God will keep his salvation, who knows that God is the one who has chosen him, elected him, justified and sanctified him, that person comes in this 1,44,000 people. The title for them is important. They're called as the servants of God. They're called as the servants of God. The job is to give the message of God. We'll read that, verse 4. And I heard the number of them which were sealed, and they were sealed 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel. We come verse 9 and we see something about them. And after this I beheld a great multitude, which no man can number, of all nations and kindreds and peoples and tongues, and stood before the throne, before the Lamb, clothed with white robes and palms in their hands, and cried with a loud voice, saying, Salvation to our God, which sitteth upon the throne and upon the Lamb. This is at 1,44,000 people, for whom salvation is dependent on whom? On God, not on themselves. That is the true church, who will always work, always struggle, they'll always be militant. Someone sent a message that, do we believe in one saved, always saved? Right? Right? So the point, do we believe in one saved, always saved? Depending on how you mean it. Right? It's better not to use that term. Right? Because one saved, always saved would mean what? Or can imply what? I'm saved and I can do what I want. But perseverance of saints did not mean that. Perseverance of saints meant that when the person is saved, what will happen? He will persevere. He will be the church militant who's continuously struggling to be in the truth in which God keeps him. So when we say once saved, always saved, in one sense is true, it's a term that we rather may not use. It's better to use it. Every person who believes in God will persevere, because God is going to help him, God is going to lead him, and God is going to keep him. That not a single person is going to be lost. And this is shown in the book, in the Bible, many times, in the book of Revelation in different ways. For example, you find John measuring the temple. Now, the idea of measuring the temple is the measurements were accurate. Every measurement that is taken does not change. So the number of people that God has kept will always be the same. Not a single person will be lost. That's the impact, or that's the idea of that 1,44,000 people who will be protected even when the entire earth is destroyed. That does not mean will not suffer with the wicked. Let's understand this. Right? So if anyone tells you that as a Christian, we are not supposed to face the same persecution, it's not true. When they say God has destroyed the nations, will God destroy the ungodly along with that? It's not because God destroyed the ungodly. You are not taken in that same manner, because you understand very quickly from chapter 6 and chapter 7 that the sealing is already done before. And because the sealing is done, when these people will be killed and tortured, it is not the same judgment. So when a tree falls on an unbeliever, can you call it as God's judgment? Yes or no?
Yes.
And when it falls on a believer's head, death is not a judgment for a Christian. At that particular moment, if God wanted to punish him for something else, we do not know. But death itself is not a judgment for a Christian. That's the reason, in the middle of the worst situations, as I again say, only a Christian can be at peace. With all the things that's happening in the world, only a Christian can make sense of things that's happening around him. Not that he'll be able to perfectly say what's going to happen tomorrow. No, but he knows one thing. He is safe in the hands of the God who has kept him. In fact, our country is going through a time which this message makes even more sense. We really do not know what's going to happen tomorrow in this country. We really do not know. But should a Christian worry and lose his peace? No. Because do not be anxious is a commandment about anything. So should he worry about what is happening? No. Should he will? Is it possible that he gets worried? Of course he is. But the entire thing at the end for him is God is going to keep him safe, not from physical harm, but his soul is going to be kept safe by God all throughout the time. 12,000 from each tribe, showing us that no matter where the person belongs to, God will still pick every person, the perfect number, even if it does not come in the usual chronology of Israel. Even if it does not fit into the usual way Israel did its numbering, doesn't matter. God will still save each person to whom his son has died on the cross. Not a single person in that will be lost. That's the greatest meaning of 1,44,000 people who are marked on their foreheads, marked for their faith. And these are the ones who he says are my servants. And people will know who they are because it's very much seen in their lives by the term that is there on their foreheads.